Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janarandana Jasodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Braja Janarandana Jasodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Astatarasata Srimada's Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Gaur Premanandi. So for this program, I thought I would try to do two things. One is because it's the appearance day of Narottam Das Thakur, to speak something. Narottama Das Thakur, great Acharya in our line of disciplic succession. Just something in honor of his appearance day. And then the second, I'd like to share with you just a continuation of something that I started sharing a little bit this morning. That is the Aranya Kanda and Kiskinda Kanda sections of Ramayana. And I'd like to share that because, as I was expressing this morning, when you receive something that's so nice, you want to share it with others, so that's what I want to do. In our disciplic succession, our disciplic succession is Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya Sampradaya. According to Bhagavad Gita, it is essential to receive knowledge in disciplic succession because in this world there's lots of information, but knowledge is not just information. Knowledge changes the heart. It's transformational, not just informational, and it changes the heart from material to spiritual. And we can connect with Krishna that way. So, the teachings of Krishna that were revealed directly within the heart of Brahma, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma received knowledge of the Vedas directly from Krishna within the heart. Krishna was his guru. And then, according to the instructions that he received, he also shared that knowledge in disciplic succession. And in our disciplic succession, it's his son Narada to Vyas, and then there's a big gap of time, but Vyas directly instructed Madhvacharya, so Brahma Madhva, and in the line of Madhvacharya was also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embody elements and essences of Madhva's teaching, and because he's Krishna himself, additional teachings, that is, rather than simply Dvaitavad, Achintya, Ved, Abhed, Tattva. Now some of you may not know this, but that term that we use all the time, the inconceivable oneness and difference of all things with the source of emanation of all things. There's one source of emanation of all things, and that is the absolute truth. And the absolute truth has this sambandha, or relationship, between all things and the source of all things. So that inextricable oneness of all things with the Supreme, also Lord Chaitanya taught there's a difference between all things and the source of all things, and one is the source and the other is the emanation from the source. In all different categories of all things. Prakriti, in its different divisions, the external energy, the internal energy, and the marginal energy, the living entity, there's oneness and difference. His own expansions, Vishnu Tattva expansions, oneness and difference, because there's only one source of all things. And so there's a oneness and difference of all things from the source of all those things. That's essentially Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching, which is derived from Vedanta Sutra and corresponds one-to-one correspondence with Srimad Bhagavatam. Jiva Goswami coined this phrase, or gave this phrase about Lord Chaitanya's teachings being Achintya, Ved, Abhed, Tattva. That's Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami explains this as a great acharya to honor Lord Chaitanya. Listen carefully. Jiva Goswami wrote 3 commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. 3. One was like Srila Prabhupada did, verse by verse by verse. Krama Sandarbha. And then he gave another commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, voluminous. And then he gave a third commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam called the Sandarbhas, the Sat Sandarbhas, 6 Sandarbhas. And the first of those 6 Sandarbhas is Tattva Sandarbha. And the first part of the Tattva Sandarbha explains why he did the Tattva Sandarbha. Besides, he was instructed or requested to do so by one Bhatta. Gopal, he doesn't give his name because Gopal Bhatta said, don't give my name. So he didn't. He just said one Bhatta, one learned fellow, entrusted me with his extensive writings and asked me to organize it very nicely. So his intention, yesterday evening we spent some time discussing Sankalpa, the function of Sankalpa. So for those of you that weren't with us last night, Sankalpa is like a magnifying glass. And maybe many of you did what I did when I was a kid. I was given a magnifying glass and quickly learned if you hold the magnifying glass in the light of the sun and hold it at a certain angle and a certain distance, the light of the sun becomes 1 point. Now the light of the sun is all over the place, but a magnifying glass has the capacity to take that light of the sun and make it very focused. And when it's very focused, it can burn, like the sun can burn, because the light of the sun is fire. But it's not burning things, usually, but if you have a magnifying glass, you can burn things. Sankalpa works like that. It's to focus the power of the holy name or the power of Srimad Bhagavatam or the power of Sadhu Sangha or whatever it is. And you have to be very careful. You can't just move the magnifying glass around. But if you're very careful, steady, focused, attentive, it can have the capacity of igniting things that were otherwise dormant. Just like here's a table, and beneath this cloth there's a wooden table, and inside the table there's fire. Doesn't feel hot. But there's a way to bring the fire out of the table. You know how you do that? You bring fire next to the table, and the fire that's stored in the table comes out. So similarly, there's something inside the heart of all living entities, dormant, and that is our eternal relationship with Krishna. It's there. Like a seed is dormant, and it can come out through sound that's focused, through intention, sankalpa. So Jiva Goswami's sankalpa, or his intention, naturally was to glorify Lord Chaitanya. He states it right in the very beginning. That's his Mangalacharana. He wants to glorify Lord Chaitanya. And the strategy to glorify Lord Chaitanya goes like this. 1, 2, 3. 1. Of all means of knowing Krishna, or anything, the best of all means of knowing is Srimad Bhagavatam. It's the topmost pramana. So that he establishes right at the very beginning, Tattva Sandarbha, pramana Kanda. Then the rest is a lot of work. That is, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Listen carefully. The teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's part 2. Part 3 is Therefore, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya are the highest. Boom. 1, 2, 3. And that's the intention of the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam through his teachings, the life and teachings, both. That's what Chaitanya Charitamrita is, the life and teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur described when he sent in the English language in 1896. He sent in the English language a little 86-page booklet to universities all around the world, from his own pocket, from his own expense, in the English language, a really simple little booklet, The Life and the Teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And the essence of his life and the teachings was to give Braja Prem, Namo Mahavadanaya, Krishna Prema Pradayate, Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya, Namane Gora Tvishe Namaha. And specifically, Krishna Prema Pradayate, he gave very liberally Krishna Prema, but specifically the Krishna Prema that's found uniquely in Braja. And even specifically, the mood of the love of Radha in Vrindavan for Krishna. And of course, the mood of Radha's love in Vrindavan is something that's carried by all the residents in Vrindavan to some degree. Therefore, they all have very special prema. The friends of Krishna, the cows, the elders, everybody, they have this desire to assist in the meeting and the loving arrangements of Radha and Krishna. Now, that's very high, but that's the love that Lord Chaitanya wanted to give. And it's connected with the appearance of Narottam Das Thakur. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the course of his travels, in ecstatic love for Krishna, he visited a place very nearby where later Narottam would make his appearance. This is after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has taken sannyas. He went under the request of his mother to Jagannath Puri. He traveled some time through South India and elsewhere and came back to Puri. So he is residing in Puri, exhibiting unheralded, unprecedented features of love for Krishna in the mood of Radha for Krishna. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the guise of wanting to go to Vrindavan, made a trip instead to Bengal. And one of the places he visited in Bengal was very near Kanai Natashala. Kanai Natashala is a celebrated place where Lord Chaitanya exhibited to the residents of Navadvip his ecstatic love for God shortly after he received initiation in the chanting of the holy name from Ishwara Puri. And he went to Kanai Natashala and he saw Krishna. And he went mad, running for Krishna, and Krishna disappeared, and Mahaprabhu was exhibiting the mood of Radha in separation for Krishna in Kanai Natashala and talking like a madman. And no one could pacify him. He was gone. And after some time, he came to external consciousness. So that same Kanai Natashala, some years later, he visited, and near Kanai Natashala, near the birthplace of Narottam Das Thakur, This is some years before Narottam appeared. He went to the bank of Padmavati. Is that the name of the river? Yeah? And he was calling, Narottama, Narottama, Narottama. This is recorded in Prem Vilas, one of the biographies of Lord Chaitanya's life. And Lord Nityananda asked him, why are you calling Narottama, Narottama? And Lord Chaitanya replied, do you not remember in Jagannath Puri the ecstatic love for Krishna that you were experiencing? I captured some of it. And I brought it with me. And I am going to deposit here in the Padmavati River my and your ecstatic love for Krishna. Because later this great soul, Narottama, will appear. So he took his bath in the Padmavati River and deposited his Braja Prem. And then he instructed the Padmavati River, someday one Vaishnav named Narottama will take bath here. I want you to give to him the fullness of my ecstatic and Lord Nityananda's ecstatic love for Krishna. Give it to him. And the Padmavati River responded, saying, how will I know who that is? And Lord Chaitanya's reply was, as soon as he touches your water, the river will start to overflow. Then you'll know, and you please give him this full deposit of Braja Prem, unprecedented magnitudes and volumes of Braja Prem. Give to him. Some time passed, and in Keturi, this young living entity, soul, took birth as the son of a prominent landholder or king zamindar, whichever you like. So he was born in a royal family. And he was extraordinary in his features and extraordinary in his character and his capacity for learning. And when he was just a young boy, he went to he had a dream. Lord Nityananda appeared to him in a dream and instructed him, go to the river Padmavati at such and such place, take your bath there, and Lord Chaitanya will bestow upon you all mercy. So the very next day, he went to that very place. And as soon as he touched the water of the Padmavati River, the river started to overflow. She remembered the instruction of Lord Chaitanya, and she bestowed upon Narottama, imagine, the fullness of the ecstatic love of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And he became overwhelmed. Who could imagine what that might have been like? And from that time on, he changed. His life became filled with ecstatic love in the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for Krishna. And after some time, because his father, mother, and uncle, they wanted him to become the next king, and he wasn't interested in becoming a king. So he had a stepbrother, his father's brother's son, Santosh, if I remember correctly. He became the one who had become the next king, and Narottam went to Vrindavan and took shelter of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, and he was thoroughly instructed by Jiva Goswami in the Sandarbhas and Lord Chaitanya's teachings as the highest of all teachings, and became a very celebrated Vaishnava. There's many, many nice things, but I'm not going to just speak about Narottam Das Thakur. His two things about his writings: Bhaktivinoda Thakur and subsequent acharyas accept, they extol, they glorify the songs, the writings of Narottam Das Thakur as being Shastra. Now, he's a very special personality, one who's invested with the fullness of the ecstatic love of Lord Chaitanya. Certainly is an unusual person, and his writings demonstrate that. His songs are celebrated, and it's nice to sing them, learn them, and receive from them. And one last thing is, we often hear about Bhaktisiddhanta's spiritual master, Gorkishore Das Babaji, that he was illiterate. Have you heard that before? Well, it's not, he couldn't read and write. That's usually what illiterate means. But he wasn't like a scholarly type. But the writings of Narottam Das Thakur were very dear to him. When he came to Navadvip, he had a tiger skin cap and two books of Narottam Das Thakur. And as soon as he met Bhaktisiddhanta, he gifted this tiger skin cap and his Narottam Das Thakur writings. Prarthana is celebrated literature. And it's very high, it's very concise, and it's very sublime. And Narottam Das Thakur is the author, a guide for us, or followers of Lord Chaitanya, to understand the mood and the teachings and the spirit of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, and in essence form prayers, prarthana. So we're observing the appearance day of Narottam Das Thakur, so I wanted to say a few things about him. An awesome personality in our disciplic succession. And we offer our respects to him and remember him on his appearance day. I'd like to also share something, as I said earlier. When you receive something valuable, it's natural that you want to share that something valuable. Those that like to hear Srila Prabhupada's recorded lectures, you'll know that he would often use these two terms, Brahmana and Kripana. 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 Kripana, he would say, means miser. A miser is one who has valuables, but they don't use them. He would commonly say, it's like a treasury, and their happiness is just looking at how much they have. Looking at how much they have, and counting it, and enjoying how much they have. That's the miser. And the Brahmana is one who doesn't keep a treasury, whatever he has, he uses in Krishna service. So that's what Vaishnavas like to do, receive, and we like to give. So I'm going to spend some time, not too much. It's a little after 2. What time am I supposed to end? Who's our timekeeper? 2:30. No way. I'm gonna have to go longer. I'll try to finish. But once I get started, it's hard to stop. So, I spent 20 days during the month of October learning many things that I had never received before. because of time, I won't say it all, but having visited places of Krishna's pastimes, Vrindavan, Jagannath Puri, Mayapur, Vrindavan, Jagannath Puri, Mayapur. Then we started going to other places on pilgrimage with the devotees. So one of those places we went to was Ayodhya and Chitrakoot. I had never been to Chitrakoot before, but it's those of you that have been to Chitrakoot will know that it's unspoiled, it's not commercial. It's as devotional as you can imagine a place being devotional. Of course, there's shops and things, but even the shopkeepers are devotional, what to speak of the people that live there. They're very, very devoted, deeply devoted to Ram. And, it's a very special place. So, the Balakanda and Ayodhya Kanda end in Chitrakoot. And after Chitrakoot, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu enters the forest, the Dandak forest, for 14 years. So many of the devotees wanted to go to the Dandak forest. And I thought, how are we going to do this? Because it's so spread out. But we went. And I'm familiar. I'm born in America. I only speak English, and I only know what I learned from Prabhupada, but that's everything. I don't know so much about Ramayana. Prabhupada didn't emphasize it so much. But I came to know from visiting Ayodhya and Chitrakoot that Sri Vaishnavas have profound interest in Ramayana, just like Gaudiyas, followers of Lord Chaitanya, have profound interest in Krishna. And there's abundant writings and commentaries, etc., on Krishna, particularly in Vrindavan, but other places also, Dwaraka and Mathura. So an arrangement was made, I requested, so it was done, that 6 or 7 Tamil English-speaking translators went through the commentaries of 5 different acharyas in the Sri Vaishnava line that wrote in Tamil and translated Dandak and Kiskinda Kanda commentaries from Tamil to English. 1,500 hours of volunteer time. That's a lot of time. And then that was presented to me. And it was all new. But it was very profound and very deep. So I spent 20 days, 15 to 16 hours a day, diving into that ocean of Ram Katha from those acharyas. And outstanding amongst them was Govindaraj, and I want to share with you some of the Govindaraj's teachings. So those of you that are a little familiar with Ramanujacharya, you know who his principal guru was. Who was that? Yamunacharya. So I didn't know this, but Yamunacharya extensively, he didn't write about, but he had teachings on Ramayana. And in those extensive teachings on Ramayana, he indicated that there are 18 principal lessons to be learned from Ramayana, the essence of which is Sharanagati. Now we know from Sharanagati in our Gaudiya line, largely from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who wrote 86 songs on Sharanagati. I am sure, reasonably sure, that many of the things that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote about Sharanagati, not only they're drawn from Lord Chaitanya's teachings, but he was a well-educated personality, and there's homily, there's great similarity between those teachings and Ramanujacharya's teachings. So Ramanuja received from Yamunacharya extensively taught Sri Shailapurna everything about his teachings on Ramayana. Sri Shailapurna taught everything that he learned from Yamunacharya to Ramanujacharya. There's this nice story where Ramanujacharya goes to Tirupati or Tirumala to receive teachings from Sri Shailapurna on Ramayana. Sri Shailapurna is the maternal uncle, that is, Ramanujacharya's mother's brother, maternal uncle. They were both disciples of Yamunacharya, but specifically Sri Shailapurna in his elder age had received extensive, elaborate, comprehensive teachings on Ramayana from Yamunacharya. So Sri Shailapurna is counted as one of the 5 gurus of Ramanujacharya. He wasn't his Diksha guru, but one of his 5 gurus. So when he went to Tirupati, Sri Shailapurna came to know his nephew has come. So he came all the way down that big hill. It's when there wasn't even a road like there is today. There's all those steps. And he's elderly. So Ramanujacharya, this celebrated expression, you didn't need to come all the way down the hill to receive me. You should have sent some lesser person to come just to receive me. And the reply from Sri Shailapurna was, well, I looked around for some lesser personality and I couldn't find any, so I came myself. His heart was full, and one whose heart is full by nature is very humble. Vaishnav humility. So Ramanujacharya spent months hearing every day for hours from Sri Shailapurna, and he came to know Yamunacharya's teachings, including these 18 elements, and of lessons from Ramayana. And then, of course, Ramanujacharya taught others, and others wrote commentary according to that system of Yamunacharya, or summarized and organized very nicely by Ramanujacharya. Then some decades later came Govindaraj. And Govindaraj was residing at Tirupati, worshipping his deity. And one day, Govindaraj received an instruction from the main deity. In a dream, the deity instructed him, write a commentary on Ramayana. When the little bit that I have acquaintance with Govindaraj's writings, he reminds me of Krishnadas Kaviraj in his style. Because similarly, Kaviraj, Krishnadas, received the title Kaviraj because he was the king of learned fellows. Kavi, Raja. That was a title. And his composition of Chaitanya Charitamrita is outstanding. It's not only the details of his life and teachings, but it's comprehensive, thoroughly supported by scripture, and details and details and details. And he's very careful to not repeat the details of the previous commentator, Vrindavan Das Thakur, but his writing is superlative, the best. And Govindaraja, similarly, amongst the commentators, he is considered superlative, the best. But he's also extremely humble, and so he wrote, I've been instructed like this, but I've not created anything new. It's just the previous acharyas, and I've gathered it together and tried to make some order in it, with all kinds of scriptural references, etc., etc. It's fantastic. So now I'm going to share with you a little bit of those teachings. And I shared one of them this morning. Those of you that were not with us this morning, quickly, Govindaraj explains that Sita not only is the internal potency of Ram, just as Lakshmi is the internal potency of Narayan, so same, that's her tattva, Shakti tattva of the Supreme Lord, internal potency. And in Ramayana, she has another function in order to enhance the glories of Sharanagati, where Sita, as we discussed in the morning verse, has a desire that's not simply for the pleasure of Ram. It's the first time in her life, Govindaraj writes, that she had a desire that was other than fulfilling the desire of Ram, and that is there was an object out there, namely a golden deer, that she wanted to enjoy. Because this is material consciousness. Vishaya. Sense objects meant for my enjoyment. That's material consciousness. She exhibited that by the arrangement of Ram, so that his Leela could show this is what happens when you have this propensity. And it leads to other things. It leads to neglecting instructions of the spiritual master, which in this case, his writings say, was Lakshmana was taking the function when he instructed her, no, that's not a deer, that's Maricha, doing the Maricha. He's doing his thing. Don't. She ignored the instruction. Guru Avagya, in our Gaudiya teachings, neglecting the instructions, she just ignored it and went on with wanting to be the enjoyer of the object. So she paid a price. She was abducted by Ravan. And then what follows is, according to Govindaraj, is Bhagavan feelings that Bhagavan feels when there's a devotee that has natural attraction for Bhagavan, but somehow has become distracted by this mood of being the enjoyer of a sense object, or sense objects in general. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinam. For those who are dehinam, dehi is the occupier of the body, and the body has senses, and when the living entity who is dehi, the occupier of the body, wants to be the enjoyer of sense object, vishaya, it's a struggle. It can potentially be an endless struggle. That's not nice. A struggle that never ends. It changes. The struggle becomes this instead of that, and then it's another thing and another thing, but a struggle that never ends. That's unpleasant. Bhagavan doesn't like that. So I'm going to share two things about what Govindaraj says about what happens next. There has to be an acharya. So Bhagavan, Ramchandra, wanted to empower someone, an acharya, to go rescue that living entity that has gone away. That's what acharya's job assignment is. It's just being an instrument of, like Krishna says to Arjuna, nimitta matram. Nimitta matram. Become my nimitta, become my instrument. So Krishna had a plan, and he wanted Arjuna to be the fulfiller of his plan. Now Krishna doesn't need Arjuna to be the fulfiller of his plan. It's for the benefit of Arjuna that he becomes the nimitta. Same for us. Our assignment is, we mentioned this morning, receive mercy and give it. As much as you have received, you can give it, and if you haven't received it, you can't give it. And give it in the mood of nimitta, not in the mood of false ego. Karta aham. So Ram, in feeling great pain, there's different kinds of the transcendental pain, but one kind is the living entity that's gone away from him. That's us. We've gone away from him. He didn't say get away. We said it's our doing. We turned our back and walked. And when you turn your back on the sun, what do you see? Shadow. And in that shadowy existence, we suffer. And Bhagavan doesn't like to see us suffer. He wants us to come back. So he sometimes comes himself, as he did with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but otherwise he'll send messages, he'll send his messengers, and one of those categories of messengers is the Acharya. So he's searching. But the Acharya is sent to him by Sugriva. He's the minister of Sugriva, and as an emissary from Sugriva, he goes to examine whether Ram is friend or foe. Is it a trick of Vali, or to find out, friend or foe? As soon as Hanuman, so there's steps of identifying the Acharya and empowering the Acharya and preparedness and so many things. So, as soon as Hanuman sees close Lakshman and Ram, his uncertainty is gone. He immediately pays his respects. Govindaraj says, this is unusual. Hanuman is in the guise of a Brahmana, and here's a Brahmana paying his respects to two Kshatriyas. How's that? It's the other way around. But Govindaraj says, because he understood this is the personality of God, just by seeing them. Those of you that like to read Chaitanya Charitamrita, you know that Lord Chaitanya gave instructions 3 years successively on the duty of a householder. There, I see some householders here, and probably some that if you're not, you will be. So what's your duty as a householder? If you ask Lord Chaitanya, here's the answer you're going to get. 2 things, your duty as a householder. Whenever there's a possible opportunity, you serve a Vaishnav, and as far as possible, always chant the holy name. Now, in your workplace, you may not be able to sit down on your desk and have japa. But the mood of wanting, of attraction for the chanting of the holy name can stay with you, especially if you chant nice japa in the morning. And whenever there's opportunity to serve the Vaishnava. So the natural next question was, how do we identify who is a Vaishnava? That's a good question. In 3 successive years, Lord Chaitanya gave the very beginning stage of identifying the intermediate stage and the advanced stage. And when we got to the advanced stage, it's when you see somebody and they simply remind you of Krishna, that's a Vaishnava. That's the Uttama Vaishnava. Just by seeing that person, those of you that have seen the recordings of Prabhupada Memories, there's a series of videos, people that had service and interaction with Prabhupada, and you'll hear it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Just by seeing Prabhupada, their heart melted. Or, I felt he could just see right through me. And he saw all the impure things, and I felt a bond of affection for this power just by seeing him and his seeing them. By Hanuman just seeing Ram, that was it. I'm paying obeisances. And then Lord Ramachandra started examining him. He asked, "Who are you?" And immediately forthcoming was Hanuman explaining everything. Govindaraj comments, Ram didn't directly reply to Hanuman. Ram turned to Lakshmana and spoke about his observations of Hanuman. Here's his qualification. He's looking for a guru, the acharya to represent him. And he sees all kinds of credentials and qualities in Hanuman. But he doesn't say it to Hanuman, he says it to Lakshmana. It's part of the protocol that as a king he would observe. When Hanuman took Ram and Lakshman to meet Sugriva, just by Hanuman's word, not only their friend instead of enemy, but you should make a bond of friendship with him because then all your purposes will be fulfilled. Just by hearing from Hanuman, Sugriva is okay. And bond of friendship and so forth. And then comes, after the slaying of Vali and the 4 months of the rainy season and so many things happen, it's time for the Vanaras to go find Sita. And as the Vanaras go to find Sita, Hanuman is sent with the Vanaras that are heading in the southerly direction. Now it was seen by Jatayu and the Vanaras that he was headed in the southerly direction. So like intuitively that's maybe where he is. But Rakshasas have the capacity to zoom all over the universe. They can go to the heavenly planets. I learned this from the Dhruva Maharaj description. In Bhuvar Loka, so this is Bhuvar and Svargaloka. Those of you that know the Gayatri mantra, you know there's these 3 regions. Bhuvar and Svargaloka. So Bhuvar Loka is commonly inhabited by several different entities, but one of them is Rakshasas. They have mystic powers, they can travel all over the place, they can do many mystical things, but that's so there was no certainty that Ravan had gone somewhere south. He started going, but he could have gone anywhere. So there was no certainty. And when everyone was sent in different directions, Sugriva said, I am confident, Hanuman, that you will be successful. So now after all of what Ram has observed and so forth and so on, here's this confirmation. He also is now certain, and he gives his ring, he gives his words. He's now empowered by the word of Ram. I am certain, I have all confidence in you, you will find Sita. That utterance by Ram is like, that's the empowerment. You're the acharya, you're the nimitta representing me to go find Sita and help that entity that's now distracted away from me can return to me. That's the acharya function. So he goes and they spend some time, they can't find Sita. Sampati identifies where Sita is. Jambavan reminds Hanuman of his power to go to Lanka and find Sita. Hearing, because there was this curse by the Brahmanas that he would forget his powers until somebody reminded him. Jambavan reminded him, so now he's aware of his powers. He's not ready to go yet. He's got to prepare himself. something like Srila Prabhupada was given the instruction by Bhaktisiddhanta to do what Prabhupada did. He was carrying out an instruction. He was the nimitta of the cyclic succession. But he prepared himself for a long time in Vrindavan, specifically in the rooms of the Radha Damodar temple. He was preparing himself, feeling not qualified. Many narrations about that. Prabhupada's own expression of feeling. Mission impossible. How is this will be possible? But he had an instruction he must fulfill. So Hanuman standing on the top of Mahendra mountain, preparing himself, crouching, getting ready to go. And there's this detailed description of what happens to the Mahendra mountain. But he is just preparing himself before the leap across the ocean to reach Lanka. And as he's leaping across the ocean to reach Lanka, there's only one thing. The instruction of Ram. Acharyas need to be very focused like that because there will always be obstacles. If you're not an acharya, if you are an acharya, life has obstacles. One thing, the instruction of Ram. Fulfill the instruction of Ram, not in false ego, but as an instrument. All the power he needs is in the instruction, full confidence. Crossing, obstacle. Reaching Lanka, obstacle. There's Lankini. Finished. She recognizes, whoa, this is what was predicted long ago. A monkey will come and Lanka will be destroyed. And then further obstacles and further obstacles and further obstacles and further obstacles. Ram's mission. I somehow have to instruct, once he found Sita, because there was, what is a passage I really like, one of my favorite passages. Hanuman looked everywhere, and he couldn't find Sita. So now he's in a little monkey form on a wall surrounding Lanka. I can't go back and say, well, I got here, but I couldn't find Sita. Somebody said she's here, but, I failed and I couldn't find Sita. I can't. She's here. I must find her. So he felt some feelings. We know what those feelings are. Oh, mission impossible. Go and distribute books, or go open a center, or things that Prabhupada had devotees doing. But the instruction is there, so mission impossible is not impossible. So his determination doubled. And then intelligence, guiding his activity. Sita really liked being in the garden in Ayodhya. Maybe she's in the garden. Light went on. So we went, and sure enough, and then he saw the whole scene. Anyway, so many things. There's no obstacle that can stop one who is fixed in instruction. So we all have some instruction. Sometimes devotees say, can you give me an instruction? From whatever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, bring the mind back under the control of the self. There's a nice instruction. It's Krishna's instruction. And within Krishna's instruction is the power to fulfill the instruction. Can you give me another instruction, because that one's too hard? The mind is chanchala, himana Krishna, balavad. It's too difficult. But it's possible. Within the instruction, the power to fulfill the instruction is there. So that's the Acharya Hanuman. And he goes above and beyond because he understands. So now that's some things that, of course, that goes into Sundara Kanda, but their translators made that available too from Govindaraja's commentary. And then, so in addition to there must be Acharya, there's another very important of the 18 teachings or lessons, at least the English translation that I was provided speaks of this, there must be an intermediary. And there's many examples of that in Ramayana, but one who prays for your well-being. There's someone who has a relationship with Krishna, and they introduce you to the path to Krishna. That's the Vartma Pradarshaka Guru function. And any one of us can do that. If we're not in false ego, we can be the nimitta, to be the one who reminds people of what they've forgotten, that is the path to Krishna. There's Krishna. You don't have to be a perfected soul to be performing that function. But you have to be a well-wisher in a spiritual conception of who you are and the other person, and the real shelter for that other person and you is Krishna. That function is performed by Dhruva's mother, Suniti, Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. She has all faith. She transfers that faith to her son, and he's moved by that faith. So he goes from just wanting to get back at his stepmother to now he wants to get back at his stepmother. He's a mixed devotee, but devotion to Vishnu because of his mother. And then the rest happens. So that intermediary function is described by Govindaraj in this way. I really like it, so that's why I'm sharing it with you. There's a contrast. It's something I learned in Borijan Prabhu's Art of Teaching seminar. Borijan Prabhu is not only he's a godbrother, but I shared it the other day. The first literature, no, it was this morning. The first literature that I received, Krishna conscious literature, was from Borijan because we went to school together. And he's always been out front. He's a visionary person that's very powerful. So let me see if I can remember now why I'm telling you about Borijan. Huh? Say it louder. What? No, that was this morning. It was going to make sense. No, it's something else. But thank you. I'll just try to get back on track. Sorry about this. Govinda Raja teaching, there must be an intermediary. So there are two personalities in Ramayana that had fear of Ram. One of those was Maricha, and another was Sugriva. Sugriva overcame his fear because of Hanuman, but Maricha didn't overcome his fear. And it goes like this. This is the second time that Ravan goes to find Maricha. So Maricha was one of the two sons of Tataka. Interesting that the first demon killed by Krishna and the first demon killed by Ram was a female. And amongst our Gaudiya acharyas, there's no explanation. There's some translation work going on where there is some explanation of one of the acharyas, contemporary of Jiva Goswami. Anyway, I won't go there. Why it was a female, but Tataka was harassing the sages. So you know, Vishwamitra came to visit and request Dasarath to have Ram come and kill Tataka. And he didn't want, but he accepted. So when Ram was in combat with Tataka and Maricha and Subahu, her two sons, for some reason, Leela reason, Maricha wasn't killed. He was hit by one arrow, and he went hundreds of miles in the air and landed in the ocean. He survived, and Tataka and Subahu didn't. So in the second time that Ravana comes to meet Maricha, because he's a renowned mystic, he has a plan, and he tells the plan. Specifically, the plan to defeat Ram is to weaken Ram by having Sita taken from him, and Maricha was an integral part of the plan to have Sita taken from him. Maricha had already advised Ravan, don't mess with Ram. And enough to give Ravan pause, so he went back. So now second time he's saying the same thing again. Now the plan is all laid out in detail. And Maricha explains, you have no idea. You're powerful. You have no idea how powerful is Ram. And he tells the story, sent by an arrow, hundreds of miles. One arrow, hundreds of miles. I landed at the sea. I survived. I came back to Lanka, recognizing that Ram is very powerful, but in the association of the other Rakshasas in Lanka, I became ready to try it again, to go do the Rakshasa program. So 2 other Rakshasas got together with me, and we had this nice plan. Well, we have mystic powers. We can assume form of a deer. We'll go to the forest where the sages are, and they won't be alarmed. We'll just be in the form of deer, and then we'll pounce on them and eat them and have a big Brahman feast, eating Brahmanas. And they did that for some time, and Ram came to know. This is Maricha telling Ravan. So when Ram came, I recognized him, and I immediately ran as fast as I could go. And he wouldn't kill me from behind because that's his ethic. But he immediately killed the other 2. And since that time, I've been living the life of ascetic. Why do you think I'm here in a cave? Living the life of an ascetic. Because I'm terrified of Ram. When I go outside the cave and I see a tree, I see Ram. When I see many trees, I see many Rams, and I run back to the cave. Sitting here in the cave, if I even think of a word or hear the word that starts with an R, my whole body trembles. I'm filled with fear of Ram. So, Ravan, whoever is advising you this way, they're your greatest enemy, but count me out. I'm not going to participate in this plan. So Ravan's mood changes. I came to ask you, now I'm telling you. You either help me or I'll kill you. Tell me what you want to do. I'd rather be killed by Ram than you. So I'll help you. Now the question is, when they traveled to where Ram was in Panchavati, why, if he understood, not if, he understood the power of Ram superior to the power of Ravan, why didn't he just go and fall at his feet and say, that guy's a bad guy, and he wants to kidnap your wife, so let him have it, and, please protect me. He could have done that. Why didn't he do that? Because he didn't have this key essential thing happen. There wasn't a intermediary, someone that was telling him about take shelter of the personality of Godhead. So he did what he did. He followed the plan of Ravan. And then later, Govindaraj says, why did he call out when he was shot by Ram's arrow? Lakshman, Sita, help! Why did he do that? He wanted Ravan to be killed. And he wanted Ravan to be released from his sins by being killed by Ram. Because he couldn't do that, but Ram could do that. He understood, but he couldn't take shelter because he didn't have that very fortunate event in his life. But Hanuman performed that function just by the word of Hanuman. Not only he's friend instead of enemy, make a bond of friendship with him. So he's one of the classic Sakya Rasa personalities in Ramayana. He not only became a devotee, he became a dear friend, like Arjuna is a dear friend. Just by that intermediary function. So, how does that apply to all of us? We're involved in the process of Sharanagati. And we need, it's not optional, we need the well-wishing persons who have some connection with Krishna. The more, the better. Stronger the connection with Krishna, the better. But we need association of devotees who are well-wishers. And then we have strength beyond our strength. We have access to Krishna that otherwise won't even occur to us. We'll have this difficult situation and the mind goes blank because we're attached to the temporary. And when you're attached to the temporary, you forget who you are, forget Krishna, and you feel all these negative emotions that we encounter all the time in our life and in interacting with devotees. And the root of it is forgetfulness of Krishna. And therefore we have instead this duality program, happiness and distress program. And we struggle. Isn't it? Daiva hiyesha gunamayi mama maya durat ya. It's very difficult. We need association. When we forget, we need people to remind us. Your best friend is that person or those persons who remind you of Krishna when you forget Krishna. And if you want to be the best friend of somebody, you can comfort them and do all kinds of nice things. That's also to be done. But the essence of friendship is reminding others of Krishna. And that's part of our service to our spiritual masters and the disciplic succession to remind people of Krishna. That's what the line of disciplic succession does. And we're connected and we'll remember. It's not like difficulties will stop because we're in this place of difficulty. This is a place of duality and there's difficulty. But the real difficulty is our forgetfulness of Krishna. We can never overcome that one. We can enter into the spiritual world. That's our passage back home, back to Godhead. There's one more thing I wanted to say, but I think I had better stop because of time. I'm looking at our timekeeper over here. Keep going. The story of Ramayana is very sublime. Embedded within the story of Ramayana are jewels that shine. And through the assistance of acharyas, we can then, oh, look at this jewel, look at that jewel, look at that jewel. We may not see the jewel, and there's potency within that sound vibration that's jewel-like, and then through the assistance of our acharyas, we can appreciate even more. Once upon a time, I was a new devotee. Seems like lifetimes ago. 50 years ago, I was a new devotee. And some of you are new devotees. So 50 years ago, I was a new devotee. And I had, the first temple I was residing in was the Boston Temple. It was the Boston Temple because I had gone to Boston to check out enrolling in graduate school, and Boston has lots of prestigious universities. So I went, and Krishna arranged that I visited the temple. I didn't even know that there was a temple in Boston, but what happened was I was staying in a place, and on the windowsill, those little tiny Jagannath deities, on the windowsill, in the home of people that aren't devotees. And the light went on, because in the place where I was going to college, they had Jagannath deities. So I said, I better go visit the temple. So I went to the temple, and it was like super fantastic. And so when I decided to live in a Hare Krishna temple, it was the Boston Temple, because it was super fantastic. And at that time, there was no BBT. This is 1970. BBT hadn't been formed yet. It was ISKCON Press. It was one legal entity. So in this house was the Sankirtan devotees and the deities and ISKCON Press. So part of ISKCON Press was this wonderful situation where the Prabhupada would send these little micro cassettes, and they would listen to the micro cassettes before anybody had anything, and the transcribers would transcribe into text, and the artists would listen, and then the artists would plan the paintings that would be for Prabhupada's books. So they got it before anybody got it. And there were 3 artists, very celebrated personalities in those days even. And Bharadraj, Murlidhar, and Jadharani, they were the 3 artists, the principal artists. Once they decided what the paintings would be, there was an assembly line. Bharadraj made the line drawings. Maybe you've seen art of Da Vinci or some artist, just line that starts with a line drawing. Bharadraj was the creative one. Then Jadharani would fill in the painting, and then Murlidhar would come and put in the detail. And the detail and lends exquisiteness to the paintings, or to anything, to music, to art, to speaking, and etc., etc. To those of you that like to cook, details. I mean, you can make sabji, and then you can make really super sabji, or something. It has to do with consciousness, of course, but also spices and the sequence and everything. Details and details. So, Murlidhar did the details, and it made the painting like really, 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 really good. And they worked that way for some time. Then later they each took a project and did the whole thing. But the embellishment of details is the assist of our acharyas. So I'm going to share with you one other detail about Ramayana. In this case, it's not Govindaraj, but it's Rupa Goswami and Jiva Goswami. So some of you probably grew up hearing Ramayana since childhood. Not me, but some of you. And I've heard from some of you that I can't read Ramayana anymore. It's too sad. Have you heard that? Some people have said that to me. So I was curious, like, the English translation I was reading was saying this word over and over, sorrow. The sorrow was in relation to Ram's being exiled for 14 years and he can't become the king. And when he accepted it, like, fantastic. Kaikeyi, is that all? And she was like, expecting an argument. Is that all? I'll leave it once. But when he informed others, there was sorrow and sorrow and sorrow according to their relationship with him. And one by one by one. And some persons reading Ramayana, they had to stop reading Ramayana. Close the book. It's too sad. So I became curious about that. It's good to have questions. If you don't have questions, you're not alive. If you have alive, you have questions. So it's good to have questions. And so I started exploring, and here's what I found, to keep it short. Rupa Goswami discusses this in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that's summarized in Nectar Devotion, and the mention in Nectar Devotion is only a little bit, that says the sadness or sorrow is actually an ecstasy. And the detail goes like this. It's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There's 5 primary and 7 secondary rasas. Right? 5 plus 7 generally makes 12. So 5 primary rasas and the 7 secondary rasas interact this way. The secondary rasas may sometimes eclipse the primary rasa. When there's an eclipse, you can't see the sun or the moon because there's something in between. But it's there, but it's eclipsed. So the primary rasa may become eclipsed by a secondary rasa, and the function of the secondary rasa is to enhance the primary rasa. That's the function. And then after some time, the secondary rasa subsides and the primary rasa resumes in its fullness. That's our teaching. So each of those 7 secondary rasas has a presiding deity. Now there's different Sanskrit terminologies for those, but in Jiva Goswami's commentary on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says that Lord Ram is the presiding deity of the sorrow one. Ram wants to enhance the primary rasa of all of his devotees by the secondary rasa experience. And it looks like sad, but it's ecstatic. It is enhancing the ecstatic love of the primary rasa, although it looks different. Like grandfather Bhishma firing arrows that hit the chest of Krishna. And we read, Krishna feels ecstasy. When you get hit by an arrow, it doesn't feel ecstasy. And although his body has no veins, there was blood. Figure that one out. It's a pastime of ecstasy, showing blood. Arjun feels terrible. He's taking the arrow. It's meant for me. I can't stand it. He's really sad. It's ecstatic. Grandfather Bhishma has the primary rasa of servitorship, dasya. And here he is firing arrows at his dearmost friend Krishna, Arjun, to kill him. Krishna is taking the arrows, and he keeps firing arrows, and Krishna is feeling ecstatic. Figure that one out. It's a secondary rasa. It's chivalry. Krishna likes. So he's doing what Krishna likes, in service to Krishna. Because he wants to glorify Krishna. Just see, Krishna will break his vow, showing his Bhakta Vatsala quality above keeping his word. Those are secondary. This is primary. Giving protection to his devotee is everything for Krishna. So Ram wants to enhance the mood of love of his devotees, and so he does the sorrow thing. And Govindaraj explains, Ram inspired Kaikeyi to do what Kaikeyi did. Further, he inspired Mantra to do what Mantra did, have Kaikeyi do what Kaikeyi did, so his devotees could experience this secondary rasa enhancement, love enhanced. Isn't that profound? I mean, on the outside it looks really sad. And there's more, but these are jewels that our acharyas can illuminate and help us feel and experience. If you enter into the mood of the message, it's ecstatic love. We're being invited into a realm of ecstatic love just by hearing Ramayana or hearing the Bhagavatam with the assist of the acharyas. And there's thousands of more things, but those are just some things. So, conclusion, read Prabhupada's books. And when you're done reading Prabhupada's books, read them again. And when you're done, read them again and read them again. And it's like making sandalwood paste. You just keep going like this. And then the wood turns into paste, and the paste is very fragrant, and it's very cool. Just keep making sandalwood paste. And apply the chandan to your deity. And you'll be very happy. Hearing again and again. That's our life. And then as you hear, you'll want to share with others. And you'll share with some enthusiasm, utsahan. And you'll chant with some enthusiasm, utsahan. And when you do that, people go, wow, what's with these people? They're really enthusiastic and happy. That's our life. Chant and be happy. Receive and give. Love. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki. Any discussion? Is that okay for discussion? Our timekeeper? Okay. Are you the timekeeper, or I'm looking at you? Oh. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. You said that Maricha could not take shelter of Lord Rama because there is no...
it didn't occur to him. The thought didn't occur to him. He's Rakshasa.
But he was in fear.
He was in fear.
Yeah. Similarly, like how Vibhishana could take shelter of Lord Rama.
Govindaraj says Sita. Through his wife, Vibhishan had already a natural inclination. When Shuparnaka, back at Panchavati, when Shuparnaka is asked by Ram, who are you? She gives her whole lineage, and she speaks about Vibhishan, and basically she says he's not like the rest of us. She doesn't say he's a Vaishnav, he's not like the rest of us. So his heart was different, but he wasn't there yet. Govindaraj says it came through Sita's being. That was one of the functions of Sita being there, was the passing through his wife to him. The inspiration to take shelter.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Help him with the microphone. He doesn't know how to turn it on. You need some child. They know how to turn microphones on.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Keep speaking.
Hello. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
See, after Rama and Lakshmana Sita left for forest, Lakshmana finds that somebody is coming to attack them. That is Bharata, in his view.
Yeah.
And he asks for Rama's permission to
Kill him.
attack or kill him.
Kill him.
Okay. Now, my only doubt is, see, Lakshmana, Bharata, they lived together for some time. And Lakshmana knows the credentials, the track record of Bharata. He is not such a person to come and attack
Of course not.
these people. To then how he doubted the idea of,
Well,
Well-
it's pastime, Leela, and so he's not a conditioned soul like you and me are conditioned souls. And conditioned souls, even if we know something, when we're feeling fear, our intelligence goes to sleep, and this other thing happens. But that's a conditioned soul like you and me. Lakshmana is not a conditioned soul like you and me. He's conducting himself in such a way to teach us, according to Yamunacharya, to teach us the process of Sharanagati. No. I'm going to take the microphone away from you because there's other people that want to ask. But the answer, how is it possible, inspired by Ram, to do? How is it possible for Grandfather Bhishma to take a vow that says, before the sun sets, I will kill Arjuna, unless Krishna breaks his vow? Now, how can he do that? He's a Mahabhagavata. He's a Mahajan. He's one of the great authorities. How can he do that? Inspired by Krishna to do that. That's how.
when
This could take a while. Ramayana questions. Go ahead.
when this deer, this Maya deer, cries Lakshmana, Sita, and all that, Sita wants Lakshmana to go there
To go where?
to the rescue of Rama.
Yeah,
because
she
she
sure does.
suspects it.
Yeah.
And now Lakshmana says, no. Instruction is to guard you, because Rama.
Same. He explains it to Ram, but he did the wrong thing.
Yeah.
He says to Ram, she threatened to take her life. What to speak of, she was insulting me. But she threatened to take her life. I can't let her take her life. No, he could have her not take her life in other ways than doing what he did.
Then she starts doubting Lakshmana.
Of course.
Is it not inconsistent?
Yeah, it's not Sita. She was behaving like a conditioned soul. She's filled with love for Ram, and she wants Lakshman to go protect Ram. That's like the outside. And the inside is she's doing what Govindaraj said. She's acting like a conditioned soul. She's not trusting the most trustworthy person around. That happens when you're in Maya, or when you're covered by illusion. So she's acting like that because of that. But it's, same. How did Arjuna, an eternal associate of Krishna, forget Krishna? How did that happen? Krishna inspired it. That's how it happened. So there could be a pastime of Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita, or so there could be a pastime of Ram going to Lanka and fulfilling the purpose for which the demigods and the sages requested him. Please, do away with Ravan. It's just a Leela to fulfill Ram's purpose. That's how. It's out of the when a perfected soul acts out of the ordinary, as perfected souls would reasonably act, it's something special, and take it that way. It's inspired by the personality of Godhead. It's not like us. It's not our forgetfulness. So, are we ready to end? There's 2 hands up back there. So we'll just do these 2, if you don't mind, because of time, and have to take the feast, right? They've already had the feast? Had already. Okay. That's good. Go ahead, whoever raised their hand. 2 questions and then shh.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Shh. Okay, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, Lord Ram was unnecessarily challenged by Ravana. And then there was a great battle.
There was.
And he won because he was very pure and all of those godly qualities, because he is God himself. But then when we compare the same situation in this material world, it's like the situation, the system is like everybody's at you, challenging you. So how do we deal with these challengers? Like it's a rat race.
Take shelter of Ram. Take shelter of the personality of Godhead. Now it's easy to say, and it's another thing to do, but that's what you're to do. You take shelter of the personality of Godhead, and you will have a sense of protection. Take the microphone.
Can I continue?
You want to say something more?
Yes. So we also have to be so strategic and planning.
Yeah, sure. And that makes life very complicated, doesn't it? We have to have some plan, but make your plan aligned with Krishna's plan. And if you find out that your plan is not aligned with Krishna's plan, you delete it. You go with Krishna's plan.
Yes, Maharaj.
So how do you know what's Krishna's plan when you're a conditioned soul? That's the right question.
Yes, Maharaj.
You have to have a guide.
Yes, Maharaj.
You read the scripture under the guidance of a qualified teacher, and then learn Krishna's plan. At least keep your radar on about, what's Krishna's plan. But if your radar's off and you're making a plan, you're just going to struggle. So don't make those kinds of plans. Uh-oh.
I want to thank you, Maharaj.
Uh-oh.
Hare Krishna. So, yesterday evening we had a youth program. Maharaj was talking about the very vital point of sankalpa or intent with which you can do chanting Hare Krishna in a very focused way and destroy all the negativity in our heart. That was the main point. Yesterday we liked it very much. And today morning he said many amazing things. One of the things that stuck to my heart was just like Radha and Krishna together. Similarly, the Harikatha goes along with deity worship. And he said it is inseparable. And similarly, he said about very heart-melting pastime of Srila Prabhupada, how Prabhupada said, I was in darkness and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I became fortunate. And then he told the devotees, you all became fortunate. And then he gave an instruction to them that you should make everyone else fortunate. So, it was such a thrilling lecture by Maharaj today morning on the topic of Bhinnadrik or separatist mentality. And he also spoke on the Govindaraj's commentary on Sita, very mercifully portraying the role of a conditioned soul for all of us, so that we learn a lesson from the Ramayana also. Although she is an inseparable part of the Supreme Lord, she is Ardhangini. She is playing this role for teaching us not to become separatist in our mentality. Also now, this afternoon was a masterpiece presentation by Maharaj, because we heard from him how every single day he spent 14 to 16 hours for 20 days. He practically is absorbed in Ramayana and carrying an aura around him of Ramayana in full absorption. Therefore, superficial reading of books or going to the Google Guru for a few hours to prepare for a lecture will not help us actually. If somebody puts his heart and dwells like the way Maharaj has dwelt, he is relishing and sharing with us so many nice things. For me, the takeaway point was how Hanuman acted as a intermediary between Ram on one side and Sugriva on the other, dispelling the fear of Sugriva, and how poor Maricha did not have anyone like that, and he continued to maintain fear and got destroyed. It was such a very vital point. And similarly, many things related to Sita. It was very thrilling to hear Maharaj, and I felt that let this lecture go on for eternity, and let the time come to a stop. For the last 3 years, we didn't have Maharaj here in Hyderabad. Today, yesterday when I met him, I asked Maharaj whether he can also come to Pune. Immediately he became a little guarded. He said, no, I don't have much plans to come to India very often. He has a lot of preaching in US and many other places. But I told him, at least keep this Hyderabad program going on, come every year. So it was a very enlivening association for all of us. And we would like to express our heartfelt thanks to Maharaj by chanting one Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. His Holiness Rompada Swamy Maharaj ki. We are looking forward to having him again here and drowning all of us in this transcendental ecstatic pastimes, so that we can forget the material world and post our consciousness in the spiritual world. Thank you, Maharaj. Shri Prabhupada ki.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for Radhesham Prabhu very beautifully summarized all the 3 lectures that you had given. Personally, for me, today's lecture is it made me feel that how much you were absorbed in Ramayana, and then bringing out the beautiful lessons from Ramayana, especially that lesson what Radhesham Prabhu also shared, that how with the help of a devotee even a fearful person can become as close as a very dear friend of the Lord, just like Sugriva became a dear friend of the Lord Rama because of Hanuman's association. On the contrary, Maricha, although he was fearful of Rama, even it is said that Maricha thought it's better to be killed by Rama than Ravana. So that's why he chose to actually become a golden deer. But still he was operating only on the basis of fear. He was not operating on devotion, because he didn't have devotee association. So, and also you mentioned that how Lord Rama is the deity of sadness, in the sense it's very contrary to his name. Rama means one who actually distributes pleasure to everyone, but his life story actually enhances that pleasure through the form of that sadness. It is so beautiful, and I can only appreciate how much you have been absorbed in these things, and it's like jewels came out from this class. And I think we'll keep these jewels in our heart and relish more and more while we read Ramayana. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
When making pilgrimages like I've been doing for maybe 30 years, devotees that can't go say, can you record everything? So those of us that can't go because our kids go to school, in America it's during the semester, or whatever. So we made recordings, and then the quality could be improved. So then they got this high-resolution camera, expensive camera, and that was fantastic. But then they had to get some way of compressing the files so we could make it available. So that So there's now a system. It's still improving of making this available to others that couldn't go. So we have a flash drive, 64 gigabyte flash drive with lots of recorded material. And one of the highlights is not when I was speaking, but another devotee. There's 2 passages in Ramayana where Sita places a blade of grass between her and Ravan. Govindaraja explains there's 18 understandings built within that blade of grass being placed between her and Ravan. And that's part of this, what's in the flash drive. So if you're interested, what's the procedure? If you're interested, what's the procedure? Somebody help me. Who's going to make them? Because I'm not going to sit here and... Okay. This devotee over here can make them available to you if you want. There's a donation just to help with the production and so forth and so on. You can see him. Thank you very much. Prabhupada ki Jai.